The surveillance system at this local gas station recorded a highly unusual event. A young woman appeared, immediately catching the attention of the on-duty security guard, and rightly so, as she was engaged in some secretive and odd behavior. Upon seeing her actions, the guard turned pale instantly. Mason was having a pretty normal day before this bizarre woman showed up. He was watching the cameras, looking at cars passing by without any hiccup. But then, a woman appeared on screen. She was not accompanied by a vehicle. She just walked into the frame on foot and stood weirdly still by the pump. Mason squinted his eyes, trying to identify what the woman was doing. It wasn't normal to arrive on foot in the way the woman was behaving, which added to his piqued interest. The lady looked around nervously multiple times, as if she didn't want to be seen. That's when Mason spotted the small jerry can in her hand. There was something off about this woman, so Mason decided to ignore the other cameras for a while and focus on what this woman was doing. It seemed like she was waiting for cars to fill up their tanks with gas, and once they had their fill, she made her move. Mason saw the first car leave the station, and immediately after it finished pumping gas, she rushed toward the pump that the car had previously occupied. She was siphoning off the excess gasoline in the pump. After a car is finished, Mason shouted at the screen in surprise and anger. This type of behavior was a serious offense and one that Mason couldn't simply let happen. He felt anger boiling up in his body. He had seen people drive off without paying before, but most of the time it was because they just forgot to pay. But siphoning excess gas wasn't something you do accidentally. This was a deliberate crime, and that meant that Mason had to intervene. He put down his pen and laced up his holster. The pump was only minutes away from his off-site security room, but once he got to the gas station, he was already too late. The mysterious woman had disappeared from view. Disappointed, Mason walked back to his security booth. He let a petty criminal get away with her prize, and that didn't feel good. But what he did not know was that the woman wasn't done yet, because just after he returned to his stationary post, the woman reappeared on his television prompter. He still had his gear at the ready, so that made him good to go instantly. But still, he was too late to catch the perpetrator in the act of stealing. This game of cat and mouse occurred over 3 times, and every time Mason was just slightly too late, he had to devise another plan. His constantly missing his target filled the security guard with anger. He knew he could not go back and repeatedly make the same mistake. That's why he decided to leave his off-site security booth and stake out the gas station itself. This time he would be right there in the action. Mason grabbed a mobile monitor from the supply cabinet and connected it to the gas station grid. By doing so, he could monitor the entire situation up close. He had never had to use it before, but this was a special occasion. With the monitor in hand, he placed himself behind the station and waited. And it turned out that this plan of his was the best thing he could do, because after about an hour of waiting, it all came to fruition. He watched his monitor like a hawk and eventually saw the mysterious woman appear on screen again, and she was oblivious to his hidden location. She walked up to the gas pump to steal some more gasoline, but this time Mason was ready. He saw her coming and had all of his equipment with him from the start. He got on his feet, ready to strike at a moment's notice. But then he realized something was wrong. He had to catch her in the act. Even though she had committed this crime multiple times already, he felt like he had to catch her in the act this time. He needed ultimate proof, so he waited for her to grab the hose and fill up her jerry can. His eyes were glued to the screen, and when the young woman was filling up her few free liters of gasoline, Mason saw his chance. He jumped out from his hiding spot behind the building and bolted toward the unsuspecting woman. He had clearly caught her off guard because he could see her eyes grow large as he popped out. The woman froze for a moment as Mason ran toward her. "Stop right there," he screamed at her while running at full speed. It was an exhilarating moment for the security guard who normally didn't do much running during his workday, but this arrest wasn't going to be an easy one. The gasoline-stealing woman let out a small scream as she saw Mason approaching. His element of surprise was short-lived, because within seconds, he detached her jerrycan from the gas pump and started running the opposite way. It was time for a high-speed chase. Was Mason ready for it? The woman held the jerrycan under her right arm and started picking up the pace instantly. Before Mason knew it, they were both in full sprint. The woman seemed to know the way and traversed through the narrow urban streets surrounding the gas station. Let's see, where the hell is this woman going? Even though her outfit didn't make it seem like it, this woman was very fast. She ran at high speed through the narrow alleyways and was clearly very determined, but the heavy jerrycan slowed her down just enough. Walking around with a full gallon of extra weight couldn't have been easy. Mason noticed it too. She had a quick start, shooting away from the gas pump with quite a big head start on him, but he could clearly see that he was inching closer to her position, and it wasn't long before he was within throwing distance of the gas-stealing woman. The realization that he was gaining ground made Mason even more determined to catch her. He let out a low-pitched scream and pushed himself even more. He didn't pay much attention to his surroundings anymore, nearly missing a couple of trash cans and some pedestrians, but he could almost smell her. Right before Mason could grab the woman's collar, she ran into a seemingly abandoned lot. There were no cars parked there, and it was eerily quiet, just the quick footsteps of the woman rushing over the concrete pavement. On the lot stood a singular tall building. That was her destination. The woman ran through the open doorway of the building thinking she had made it. She did not realize how close Mason was behind her because she just focused on getting out of there as quickly as possible. So, thinking she was safe, she let herself breathe for a moment, but then, unfortunately for her, this false sense of safety was shortly lived because right after she made her way through the doorway, the hand of the determined security guard grabbed her forearm, locking her in place. Mason knew she wasn't getting away. Entering some building was not going to stop him this time. The mysterious woman clearly did not expect Mason to find her this quickly and dropped the jerry can out of initial fright. Luckily for her, the lid was twisted down firmly because otherwise all this stealing of gasoline would have been for nothing. "What is going to happen now?" the woman asked Mason. Mason let out a short sigh and told the woman they had seen her multiple times today and that he was onto her from the start. He missed the bullet the first few times. He now caught her red-handed. He saw her steal the gasoline and also caught everything on tape. After that, he explained to the woman that she was in big trouble. He was going to arrest her, but before he would do that, he demanded an explanation. "You are going to tell me right now why you siphoned all that extra gasoline. What is it all for?" Mason said with a serious face. Mason was expecting a snobby response after that demand, but to his surprise, he got the opposite reaction. The young woman started weeping softly and brushed away a tear with her free hand. The act of crying caught Mason off guard, and he even loosened his grip because of it. You might expect the woman to run away again. Mason losing focus and loosening his grip certainly gave her the opportunity to do so. But the woman tried another approach. She put her hand on his shoulder and asked Mason to follow her. There was something he had to see. The woman's touch made Mason shiver. He didn't expect this criminal to have such a gentle touch. It caught him off guard, but guarded he did remain. "What do you want me to see?" he asked her. The woman told him that he should see for himself, so Mason had no choice but to oblige. Guided by the woman's hand, they reached a large room inside the building. It was pretty much barren with nothing but some empty shopping carts and a bad odor surrounding them, but that deduction was far from correct. Mason wasn't paying close attention and this room was not empty at all. They took some more steps forward, and that was when Mason noticed that the vibe in the room started to change. The back side of the area was shrouded in shadow, and Mason could hear voices coming from that part of the room. Who is there?" Mason asked the mysterious woman. The woman pointed forward, and then Mason saw it. The floor was filled with large mattresses. Food cartons were scattered all over the room, and when he looked to his right, he even saw a cooking setup. But this one's made out of empty bean cans. What is all of this? But the biggest surprise was yet to come, because after that realization, dozens of people emerged from the shadows. They were all of them covered in dirt and had raggedy clothes. Most of them were shy at first, but after the woman nodded her head, they came over to greet Mason. A small child stepped forward. First, she approached with caution and said hi to the confused Mason. After that, she stood next to the woman and held on to her leg. The woman patted her on the head and gave the little girl the jerrycan. "Give this to your father, Grace," she said. Initially, Mason wanted to stop the little girl from running away with the gasoline. "Stop right there, little girl. Give that back to me," Mason demanded. But before he could reach out and grab the jerry can for himself, the woman stopped him and started talking. "Don't do this. I can explain everything," she said. She started out by saying that her name was Scarlett. It was good to finally put a name to the face. "But Scarlett, what is all of this?" Mason asked. Scarlett explained that many of the homeless people in the city were living inside this very building, and that was not without reason. Scarlett said that this building was the very last place where these people were able to go. The city has been focused on its rich and privileged people for years, leaving the less fortunate families to fend for themselves. These people begged the local government for shelter, but were refused time after time. Mason had been angry and determined to make an arrest the entire time. But now, for the first time, he could feel his anger slip away. It gave way to understanding and sympathy. He felt horrible that these people had to go through that, but there was something that still bothered him. He still did not understand why Scarlett needed to steal that gasoline. The thing that started this chase in the first place. A metal sound was heard in the distance, and suddenly the dark room lit up. "You see that gasoline fuels, a large portable battery that provides power and heat to this entire floor." The little girl must have made it over to the battery with the jerry can and powered up the device again. Mason now saw all the homeless people in the room clearly. The woman explained that even though it was fine during the day, this place got really cold during the night. Mason stood there with his mouth wide open. He now finally understood and realized that these people were in desperate need of help. They couldn't live without warmth, and this city wasn't going to give it to them out of the kindness of their hearts. But still, one question remained to be answered. If fuel was the only thing that Scarlett needed, she could have simply bought it like normal people would have, right? "So why didn't you simply do that?" Mason asked. That way the homeless would have been helped and Scarlett wouldn't have done anything wrong. But she had an answer to that. Scarlett told Mason that she'd been helping these homeless families for a while now. It has been an uphill battle, but with hard work and determination, she even managed to set up a foundation to help these people with food and much-needed supplies. "All my free time goes there." But it wasn't just time that Scarlett donated to these people. All her own money went into the foundation. It was a noble cause, but the foundation was the long-term solution, and these people needed warmth and power right now. Without money in the back to provide, the young woman had to get creative. After hearing this heroic tale, Mason was fully conflicted. He got why she did what she did. These people desperately needed help, and she was giving it. He couldn't take that stolen gasoline away, but he also couldn't let Scarlett keep stealing from the gas station. That would make him the worst guard ever. That's when Mason decided to do something totally out of character. He was normally a guy who lived in the background, only stepping into the spotlight when it was a last resort. But these people needed help. Now he offered to buy all the daily gasoline they needed, but he also did something else. The humble security guard decided to start a community drive at the gas station where this all began here. People from within the community itself could offer their help a little bit at a time, and all proceeds would go to these families, and wouldn't you know it, it became a hit success. Within weeks, the local community picked up Mason's initiative, and the word spread like wildfire. His gas station was visited well over 4 times more than the second most popular one in town, and the donations just kept flooding in. "I still have a hard time believing it," Mason said, smiling. At this moment in time, the gas station has already gathered enough money to provide the families with a year's worth of power. But why stop there? Mason has promised to keep the community drive going for as long as needed. Who knows where this could go? It's time they get a second chance at life. I'm really keen to know your thoughts on this story, so please don't hesitate to share your insights in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and found it engaging, I invite you to subscribe to our channel for more similar content. Feel free to share this video with your friends and family to spread the enjoyment. Take good care of yourselves, and I'm excited to connect with you in our future videos.